My name is Dr. Felix Marwick, and I study sleep at the Riverside Research Institute. For 12 years, I have monitored brainwaves, tracked REM cycles, and documented dream patterns. The work pays well and keeps me busy enough to forget about the divorce papers gathering dust on my kitchen table. Most people think sleep research sounds boring. They picture me watching volunteers nap in comfortable beds while machines beep quietly nearby. They are not entirely wrong. Until 3 months ago, that description would have fit perfectly. Everything changed when Tabitha Voss walked into my lab on a Tuesday morning in March. She wore a faded blue sweater and carried a thermos of coffee that smelled like cinnamon. Her application listed her age as 28, unemployed, and willing to participate in extended sleep monitoring for the standard compensation rate. "I need the money," she said when I asked why she wanted to join our study. "Plus, I have trouble sleeping anyway. Figured you might as well pay me for it." I explained the process: electrodes attached to her scalp and chest, video monitoring throughout the night, sleep in our facility for 7 consecutive nights while we recorded her brain activity. Standard protocol that I had followed hundreds of times before. Tabitha nodded along until I mentioned the cameras. "The cameras record everything?" "Everything visible, yes. We need to correlate physical movements with brainwave patterns. The footage helps us understand sleep behavior." She fidgeted with her thermos lid. "What if something happens that you do not expect?" "Like what?" "I do not know. Just unexpected things." I assured her that sleep studies rarely produced surprises. People tossed and turned. Some talked in their sleep. Occasionally someone fell out of bed. Nothing we had not documented extensively. She signed the consent forms without reading them. That first night, Tabitha settled into the monitoring room at 9 o'clock. The space looked like a hotel room with medical equipment attached. Comfortable bed, nightstand, small bathroom, and a dozen sensors positioned around the walls. I watched from the control room as she changed into the provided pajamas and allowed my assistant to attach the electrodes. "Try to sleep normally," I told her through the intercom. "Pretend the equipment is not there." She lay down and closed her eyes immediately. Within 15 minutes, her brain waves showed the characteristic patterns of deep sleep. Faster than average, but not unusual for someone exhausted from chronic insomnia. At 2:17 a.m., something peculiar happened. Tabitha sat up in bed, eyes still closed, and began drawing on her palm with her finger. She traced the same pattern over and over again. Circles within circles, connected by lines that formed geometric shapes. Her finger moved with deliberate purpose, as if copying from a reference she could see clearly. I watched for 20 minutes. The pattern never varied. Always the same sequence of circles and lines, drawn on her palm with intense concentration. Then she lay back down and returned to normal sleep cycles. I made notes about the incident. Sleepwalking behavior often included repetitive actions. Drawing motions were not common, but hardly unprecedented. I planned to ask her about it in the morning. When Tabitha woke up, she seemed refreshed and alert, better than she had looked upon arrival. "How did you sleep?" I asked. "Well, I think I had vivid dreams." "Can you describe them?" She paused, staring at her palm. I was learning something, like studying for a test, but the subject was not anything I recognized. Numbers and shapes and instructions, maybe? Instructions for what? I cannot remember exactly. Something important, though. Something I needed to know. I showed her the video footage of her drawing motions. She watched with growing interest, occasionally glancing at her palm. "I do not remember doing that," she said. "But the pattern looks familiar." "Familiar how?" "Like something I have seen before, but I cannot place where." I scheduled her for the remaining 6 nights, curious to see if the behavior would repeat. In my experience, unusual sleep activities either disappeared quickly or escalated into more complex episodes. Either outcome would provide valuable data. The second night followed the same pattern. deep sleep, then the same drawing motions at 2:17 a.m. exactly. This time, I recorded the movements more carefully, noting the precise sequence and duration. 43 individual gestures, always in the same order, taking exactly 18 minutes to complete. On the third night, something changed. Tabitha woke up during the drawing episode. Her eyes opened while her finger continued tracing patterns on her palm. She looked directly at the camera in the corner of the room and smiled. Not a sleepy, confused expression. A knowing smile, as if she had been aware of my observation all along. She continued drawing while maintaining eye contact with the camera. When the pattern was complete, she mouthed a single word, "Ready." Then, she lay back down and resumed normal sleep. I reviewed the footage multiple times. The transition from unconscious drawing to conscious awareness appeared seamless. No signs of confusion or disorientation typical of people waking from deep sleep. She had simply opened her eyes and acknowledged my presence as if we were having a normal conversation. The next morning, Tabitha seemed different. More focused. She answered my questions precisely and showed no signs of fatigue despite spending most of the night in REM sleep. "Do you remember waking up last night?" I asked. "No, I slept straight through." "The monitors show you were awake around 2:30 a.m. She tilted her head slightly. "That seems wrong. I would remember being awake." I showed her the footage. She watched herself drawing, then the moment of eye contact with the camera. "That is interesting," she said. "I look very awake there. But you do not remember it." "No, Dr. Marwick, I do not remember it at all." Something in her tone suggested she was lying, but I could not determine why she would want to deceive me. Sleep study participants gained nothing by pretending ignorance about their own behavior. The fourth night brought more changes. At 2:17 a.m., Tabitha sat up and began drawing as before. But this time, she spoke while her finger traced the pattern. "There are rules," she said clearly. 5 rules that must be followed." Her voice sounded different, calmer and more authoritative than her usual speech. She continued drawing while speaking, never pausing or stumbling over words. The first rule, never interrupt the learning process. The second rule, never attempt to replicate the patterns. The third rule, never share the recordings with others. The fourth rule, never ask questions about the source. The fifth rule, never try to wake me during instruction. She repeated these rules 3 times, speaking in the same measured tone. Then she lay down and returned to normal sleep cycles. I transcribed her words exactly, noting the emphasis she placed on the word "never" in each rule. The content disturbed me more than I wanted to admit. She had somehow identified my research methods and established boundaries for my observation. More troubling was how her rules addressed activities I had not yet attempted. I had not tried to replicate her patterns or wake her during episodes. The fact that she anticipated these actions suggested a level of awareness that should not exist during sleep. When Tabitha woke the next morning, I decided to test her memory directly. "Do you recall speaking last night?" "No, I do not remember speaking." "You gave me a list of 5 rules." Her expression remained neutral. "What kind of rules?" I recited them from my notes. She listened without interruption, showing no signs of recognition. "Those sound like reasonable guidelines," she said when I finished. "Did you plan to follow them?" The question caught me off guard. If she truly did not remember speaking the rules, why would she ask about my compliance? "I have not decided yet," I said carefully. "I think you should follow them, Dr. Marwick, for your own benefit." "Is that a threat?" She laughed, but the sound felt hollow. "Why would I threaten you? I am just a volunteer in your study." That afternoon, I reviewed all the footage from the previous nights. I noticed details I had missed during real-time observation. Subtle changes in Tabitha's facial expression during the drawing episodes. Moments where she appeared to be listening to something I could not hear. Brief pauses where her finger hovered over her palm. as if waiting for instruction. Most unsettling was how her vital signs remained completely stable throughout these episodes. Heart rate, breathing, brainwave patterns, all consistent with deep sleep, even while she spoke clearly and maintained eye contact with the camera. I began to suspect that Tabitha was not entirely human. The thought seemed ridiculous as soon as it formed in my mind. I had conducted hundreds of sleep studies. I understood the difference between unusual sleep behavior and genuine anomalies. Tabitha's case was strange, but not outside the realm of documented sleep phenomena. Still, the rules bothered me, particularly the prohibition against sharing recordings with others. Standard protocol required me to submit all data to my research supervisor within 48 hours of collection. By following Tabitha's rules, I would be violating institutional policy. I decided to test the boundaries. On the 5th night, I prepared to wake Tabitha during her drawing episode. I wanted to see how she would react if I violated the 5th rule. The intercom system allowed me to speak directly into the monitoring room. I could call her name or play a loud sound to disrupt her sleep cycle. At 2:17 a.m., she sat up and began drawing. I reached for the intercom button. My hand stopped halfway to the control panel. Not because I changed my mind, but because my muscles simply refused to complete the motion. I tried again, concentrating on moving my arm, but nothing happened. My hand remained frozen in place, while Tabitha continued her pattern. After 18 minutes, she lay back down. My arm immediately returned to normal function. I tested my movements carefully. No paralysis or numbness. Complete control over all motor functions. Whatever had prevented me from reaching the intercom button was gone. The experience left me shaken. I had never lost control of my body like that. Medical training suggested several possible explanations: stress, fatigue, minor neurological episode, but none felt adequate. More disturbing was the timing. The paralysis began exactly when I intended to violate Tabitha's 5th rule and ended when her drawing episode concluded. The correlation seemed too precise to be coincidental. I spent the rest of the night reviewing my notes, looking for patterns I might have missed. Tabitha's behavior had evolved steadily over 5 nights. First, unconscious drawing, then conscious awareness, then spoken rules, then apparent control over my actions. The progression suggested purpose rather than random sleep phenomena. On the 6th morning, Tabitha appeared more alert than ever. She answered my questions with unusual precision and seemed to anticipate my concerns before I voiced them. "You look tired, Dr. Marwick," she said. "Have you been sleeping well?" I stayed up late reviewing data. "You should rest more. This work can be exhausting." I found her concern oddly patronizing. She was the research subject, not my supervisor. "About last night," I began. "What about it?" "I experienced something unusual while monitoring your session." She waited for me to continue, showing no curiosity about what I might have experienced. I tried to activate the intercom system, but found myself unable to do so. "Perhaps you were more tired than you realized." My arm would not move, like something was preventing me from reaching the controls. Tabitha considered this information without surprise. "Stress can cause many physical symptoms. You should take better care of yourself." Her dismissive response frustrated me. I was describing a significant medical event, and she acted as if I had mentioned a minor headache. "Do you think your activities might somehow affect people in the observation room?" "I do not know what you mean by activities." "The drawing, the speaking, the rules you established." "Dr. Marwick, I sleep normally in your facility. If you are experiencing problems, perhaps you should consult a physician." She was lying. Her tone and body language made that clear. But I could not understand her motivation for deception. Nothing in our arrangement benefited from her pretending ignorance. I decided to confront her directly. "Tabitha, I believe you are fully aware of your nighttime behavior. I think you remember everything you do and say during those episodes." I also think you somehow prevented me from interrupting your activities last night." She studied my face for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the same authoritative tone I had heard during her rule recitation. "Dr. Marwick, you have one more night of observation remaining. I suggest you follow the rules I provided, for your own safety." "What happens if I do not?" She smiled, but her eyes remained cold. "I suppose you will find out." That afternoon, I considered terminating the study early. Tabitha's behavior had moved beyond unusual sleep phenomena into something I could not categorize or explain. My institutional obligations required me to report anomalous findings, but her rules explicitly forbade sharing the recordings. I was trapped between professional duty and an inexplicable compulsion to comply with her demands. The smart choice would be to end the study immediately and submit all data to my supervisor. Let someone with more experience determine how to proceed. Remove myself from a situation I no longer understood or controlled. But my curiosity outweighed my caution. 7 years of routine sleep studies had not prepared me for anything like Tabitha's case. Whatever was happening in my monitoring room represented a discovery that could transform sleep research forever. I decided to complete the final night of observation. The 7th night began normally. Tabitha settled into bed at 9 o'clock and fell asleep within minutes. I monitored her vital signs and brainwave patterns, noting no changes from previous nights. At 2:17 a.m., she sat up and began drawing, but this time she spoke to me directly. "Dr. Marwick, tonight you will learn why the rules exist. Pay attention carefully, because I will not repeat these explanations." She continued drawing while speaking, never looking at the camera but clearly addressing me. "You study sleep because you believe it is the brain's rest period. You are wrong. Sleep is when we receive instruction from those who came before us. Every night we learn. Every morning we forget. This forgetting protects your species from knowledge you are not ready to possess." My pen moved across my notepad automatically, recording her words despite my growing unease. Some individuals, like myself, retain these instructions. We serve as bridges between your world and the source of knowledge. We appear human, but carry responsibilities you cannot comprehend. She paused her drawing and looked directly at the camera. "The 5 rules exist to protect you from seeing too much, learning too much, or sharing too much. Violation of these rules results in permanent changes to your understanding, changes that your mind cannot survive intact." I wanted to stop taking notes, but my hand continued writing without conscious direction. "Tomorrow, you will submit a standard report stating that I exhibited normal sleep patterns with minor movement during REM cycles. You will delete all footage showing unusual behavior. You will never speak of these events to any living person." She lay back down, and my hand finally stopped moving. I stared at my notes, filled with her words in my own handwriting. The content terrified me, but I could not determine if my fear came from what she had said or from my compulsive need to record it. The rest of the night passed without incident. Normal sleep cycles, regular breathing, stable vital signs, as if the previous 40 minutes had never occurred. When morning came, Tabitha woke refreshed and cheerful. "Thank you for an excellent week, Dr. Marwick. The experience was very educational." "Educational for whom?" She gathered her belongings and smiled. "For both of us, I think." Before leaving, she handed me a folded piece of paper. "Your final instructions," she said. "Read them carefully." I waited until she left before unfolding the paper. Written in precise handwriting were the 5 rules she had spoken on the 4th night, followed by additional text. "Dr. Marwick, you have witnessed something beyond your current understanding. The choice now belongs to you. Follow these rules and continue your research with normal subjects. Your life will proceed unchanged. violate these rules and discover what lies beyond the boundary of human knowledge. Choose wisely. This decision cannot be reversed. I sat in my empty lab, reading the note repeatedly. Every rational part of my mind insisted that I report everything to my supervisor. Submit the footage, describe the anomalous behavior, and let institutional protocols determine the next course of action. But Tabitha's warning echoed in my thoughts, permanent changes that my mind could not survive intact. I thought about my comfortable life. Steady job, predictable routine, manageable problems like divorce papers and research deadlines. Nothing in my experience had prepared me for decisions involving the boundary of human knowledge. I folded the note and placed it in my desk drawer. Then I began writing my report, describing 7 nights of normal sleep patterns with minor movement during REM cycles. 3 weeks passed after Tabitha left my lab. I submitted the falsified report and returned to routine sleep studies with ordinary volunteers. College students who snored, elderly participants who talked about long-dead relatives in their sleep, insurance adjusters who ground their teeth all night, normal people with normal sleep patterns. I tried to convince myself that Tabitha had been an elaborate hoax. Perhaps she had researched my methods beforehand and crafted her performance to manipulate me. Street magicians used similar techniques to create illusions of supernatural ability. But the memory of my paralyzed arm refused to fade. No amount of rational explanation could account for the complete loss of motor control at exactly the moment I intended to violate her rules. I kept her note in my desk drawer, reading it whenever my curiosity outweighed my caution. The words never changed, but their meaning seemed to shift depending on my mood. Some days, the warning about permanent changes sounded like a threat. Other days, it read like an invitation. My research supervisor, Dr. Brennan, noticed my distraction during staff meetings. "You seem tired lately, Felix," she said after a particularly unproductive session. "Everything all right?" "Just working too many late shifts. The data analysis is taking longer than expected. Maybe you should take some time off. We can redistribute your current studies to other researchers." The suggestion appealed to me more than it should have. I had not taken a vacation in 2 years, and the accumulated stress was affecting my concentration. But leaving work meant more time alone with my thoughts, and my thoughts inevitably returned to Tabitha's final words. "I will consider it," I told Dr. Brennan. That night, I dreamed about the patterns Tabitha had drawn on her palm, circles within circles, connected by lines that formed geometric shapes. In the dream, I understood their meaning perfectly. They were instructions for something important, though I could not remember what when I woke up. The dream recurred for several nights. Each time, the patterns became clearer and more detailed. I began sketching them in a notebook, trying to capture the shapes before they faded from memory. By Friday, I had filled 12 pages with increasingly complex diagrams. The drawings looked nothing like Tabitha's simple finger movements, but they felt connected somehow. As if her patterns were basic letters in an alphabet I was slowly learning to read. I compared my sketches to the video footage of Tabitha's sessions. Her movements had been limited to what she could trace on her palm, but my drawings expanded far beyond those constraints. Intricate webs of interconnected shapes that filled entire pages and seemed to suggest even larger structures extending beyond the margins. Looking at my notebook, I realized I was violating Tabitha's second rule: never attempt to replicate the patterns. I closed the notebook and locked it in my desk drawer next to her note. The dream stopped immediately. For the next week, I slept peacefully. No visions of geometric shapes or mysterious instructions. Normal dreams about work deadlines and household repairs. The kind of forgettable nonsense that healthy minds produce during sleep. I congratulated myself for making the right choice. Whatever Tabitha had been offering, I was better off without it. Then she returned to my lab. On a Thursday afternoon in May, my assistant knocked on my office door. "Dr. Marwick? There is someone here to see you. She says you know her." Tabitha stood in the hallway, wearing the same faded blue sweater and carrying the same thermos. She smiled when she saw me, as if we were old friends meeting for lunch. "Hello, Felix. I hope you do not mind the informal visit." My mouth felt dry. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to check on your progress, see how you are adapting to your new knowledge." "I have not gained any new knowledge. I followed your rules exactly." She tilted her head slightly. "Did you? All 5 rules?" I reviewed my actions since her departure. I had not interrupted any learning processes because there had been none to interrupt. I had attempted to replicate her patterns, but stopped when I recognized the violation. I had not shared the recordings with anyone. I had not asked questions about the source. I had not tried to wake her during instruction because she had not returned for additional sessions. "Yes," I said. "I followed all 5 rules." "Including the second rule about replicating patterns?" My stomach clenched. I stopped when I realized what I was doing. "But you did attempt replication. You filled 12 pages with diagrams before you stopped." How could she know about my notebook? I had drawn the patterns in private, in my own home, weeks after her departure. The attempt itself constitutes a violation, Felix. Intent matters more than completion. What does that mean for me? She gestured toward my office. "May we speak privately?" I led her inside and closed the door. She sat in the chair across from my desk, setting her thermos on the surface between us. "You have begun the transition," she said calmly. "The process cannot be reversed." "What transition?" "From observer to participant, from student to instructor, from human to something more useful." I laughed, but the sound came out harsh and nervous. "That is ridiculous. I am the same person I was 3 weeks ago." "Are you? Have you experienced any unusual dreams lately?" I did not answer, but my expression must have revealed the truth. "The patterns you drew represent the first stage of instruction. Your mind interpreted the basic shapes and expanded them into more complex forms. This demonstrates receptivity to the learning process." "Learning what, exactly?" "Information that will help your species prepare for what comes next." "Which is?" She smiled, but offered no further explanation. "Tabitha, I need you to speak plainly. What is happening to me? You are becoming what I am, a bridge between your world and ours. The transition takes approximately 6 months to complete. What if I do not want to become a bridge? The choice was made when you attempted to replicate the patterns. Your curiosity exceeded your caution, and curiosity cannot be undone." I thought about my notebook, locked safely in my desk drawer, the pages of diagrams that had felt so important while I was drawing them. What happens during this transition? Your sleep will become instructional, rather than restorative. You will receive information that must be passed to others through methods you have not yet learned. Your human relationships will become difficult to maintain. Why would I want that? Because the alternative is worse. What alternative? Refusing the transition after it has begun results in madness. Your mind will continue receiving instruction, but without proper preparation, the information will fragment your consciousness. You will spend your remaining years in psychiatric facilities, trying to explain things no one else can understand. The room felt smaller than it had moments before. I needed air and space and time to think, but Tabitha sat calmly in her chair as if discussing the weather. How many others have gone through this transition? Hundreds over the past century. We maintain a network of bridges in research facilities, universities, and government agencies, wherever information needs to be gathered or distributed. And if I refuse? You cannot refuse. The process has already begun. I opened my desk drawer and retrieved my notebook. The pages of diagrams looked more complex than I remembered. Some of the shapes seemed to move slightly when I was not looking directly at them. "These patterns," I said. "What do they actually mean?" "Navigation charts, communication protocols, technical specifications for equipment you will help design." Equipment for what purpose? Preparing your world for integration with ours. The casual way she said this made it somehow more terrifying than if she had delivered it as a dramatic revelation. Integration sounded like a business merger, not an invasion or conquest. Who are you people? We are what your species will become, given sufficient time and proper guidance. The process is natural but slow. We accelerate it through selective intervention. How long have you been doing this? Since your ancestors developed written language. Every major advancement in human knowledge has been carefully guided. Science, technology, medicine, agriculture. Nothing happens by accident. I thought about my 12 years of sleep research, all the studies I had conducted, all the data I had collected. How much of it had been genuinely independent research, and how much had been subtle manipulation toward predetermined goals. Are you here to give me more instructions? No, Felix. You have learned enough for now. The next phase will begin when you are ready. How will I know when I am ready? You will know. She stood and picked up her thermos. In the meantime, continue your normal work. Conduct your studies. Maintain your relationships as best you can. Try to live normally while the changes occur. What about my supervisor? My colleagues? They will notice if my behavior becomes strange. They will notice, but they will rationalize the changes. Stress, overwork, personal problems. People prefer mundane explanations to uncomfortable truths. She walked toward the door, then paused. Felix, there is something else you should know. The 5 rules I gave you apply to everyone who encounters our kind, but they serve a secondary purpose, which is, they identify individuals suitable for transition. People who follow the rules completely remain unaffected. People who violate them demonstrate the curiosity and adaptability we require. So you wanted me to break the rules? I wanted you to make a choice. The nature of that choice revealed your potential. She left without saying goodbye. I sat alone in my office, staring at my notebook. The diagrams no longer looked like random sketches. They resembled blueprints for devices I could not identify. Machines with purposes I was beginning to understand, despite never having encountered them before. That night, the instructional dreams returned with greater intensity. Instead of simple patterns, I saw detailed schematics for complex systems, power sources that drew energy from human brain activity during sleep, communication networks that transmitted information through dream states, monitoring equipment that could track the thoughts and emotions of entire populations. I woke with perfect recall of everything I had seen. Over the following weeks, my daily routine remained unchanged, but my understanding of the world shifted dramatically. I began noticing details that had previously escaped my attention. The subtle ways my colleagues avoided certain topics, the carefully worded reports that omitted crucial information, the research projects that were quietly discontinued without explanation. How many people in my field were bridges like Tabitha? How many universities and laboratories served as fronts for this larger agenda? I started paying closer attention to my fellow researchers. Dr. Brennan, who had worked in sleep studies for 30 years without ever publishing groundbreaking discoveries. Dr. Hayes, who specialized in dream analysis but refused to discuss his most interesting cases. Dr. Patel, who had access to government funding for classified projects she never described in detail. Any of them could be part of the network Tabitha had mentioned. The instructional dreams continued nightly. I learned about technologies that were decades ahead of current human development, methods for manipulating memory and perception, techniques for influencing decision-making through subliminal suggestion during sleep. Most disturbing were the lessons about population management, systems for identifying individuals with useful traits and guiding them toward appropriate roles, methods for suppressing curiosity in people who asked inconvenient questions, procedures for eliminating those who posed genuine threats to the integration process. I realized that my work in sleep research had unknowingly contributed to these efforts. Every study I conducted provided data that could be used to refine control mechanisms. Every volunteer who participated in my experiments had been evaluated for potential recruitment or neutralization. 3 months after Tabitha's return visit, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a small device that looked like a modified sleep monitor. Included was a note, written in handwriting I did not recognize. Felix, Phase 2 begins now. Install this device in your primary monitoring room. It will activate automatically when appropriate subjects are identified. Do not attempt to analyze or modify the equipment. Further instructions will follow. Welcome to the network. I held the device carefully, noting its weight and texture. The surface felt warm, as if powered by an internal energy source. No visible controls or indicators, just a smooth dark rectangle about the size of a smartphone. My rational mind insisted that I should report the package to security immediately. Unknown devices delivered anonymously to research facilities represented serious security risks. Standard protocol required immediate notification of supervisors and law enforcement. But I knew I would not report it. Instead, I waited until evening and installed the device in monitoring room 3. It attached magnetically to the wall behind the bed, almost invisible among the existing sensors and cameras. The next morning, I found a new volunteer application on my desk. A young man named Derek Castellanos, age 26, requesting participation in extended sleep monitoring. His paperwork was perfect, his references were valid, and his availability matched our current needs exactly. I scheduled him for a 7-night study beginning the following Monday. Derek arrived promptly and seemed entirely normal during the intake process. Pleasant demeanor, clear explanations for his participation, no unusual questions or concerns. He signed the consent forms after reading them thoroughly and settled into the monitoring room without difficulty. That first night, he slept peacefully for 8 hours. Normal sleep cycles, regular breathing, typical REM patterns. Nothing unusual in his behavior or vital signs. But the device I had installed recorded different information. According to its display, Derek experienced 47 minutes of instructional contact, during which his brain activity matched patterns I had seen in my own dreams. Complex data streams that downloaded directly into his subconscious mind while he appeared to sleep normally. By morning, the device had compiled a detailed report on Derek's receptivity to various types of information, psychological profiles, aptitude assessments, and recommendations for his future role in the network. Derek himself showed no awareness of what had occurred. He woke refreshed and cheerful, reported normal dreams about childhood memories and work concerns, and expressed satisfaction with the sleep quality. I realized that I was now actively participating in the recruitment process Tabitha had described, identifying potential bridges and facilitating their initial instruction. My sleep lab had become a processing center for human resources needed by the network. Over the following weeks, I processed 6 more volunteers. Each one received customized instruction based on their psychological profiles and potential utility. Some were flagged for advanced technical training. Others were marked for infiltration of specific organizations. A few were designated for elimination due to incompatible personalities or excessive curiosity. I felt no guilt about these activities. The emotions that should have accompanied such realizations seemed distant and unimportant. My human concerns were being gradually replaced by more practical considerations related to network efficiency and integration timelines. By the 6th month after my initial contact with Tabitha, the transition was complete. I continued working at the Riverside Research Institute, but my true purpose involved identifying and preparing individuals who could serve the network's expanding requirements. My research provided cover for recruitment activities, and my position gave me access to hundreds of potential candidates each year. The divorce papers on my kitchen table had been processed months ago. My wife had remarried and moved to another state. I felt no sadness about the end of our relationship, only mild satisfaction that personal complications would no longer interfere with my work. Most of my human friendships had naturally dissolved as my interests shifted toward more important matters. The few colleagues who still interacted with me attributed my changes to stress and overwork. They were not entirely wrong. I am no longer the same person who first encountered Tabitha Voss in my laboratory. That individual's curiosity and fear have been replaced by purpose and understanding. His questions have been answered, his doubts resolved. The integration process continues according to schedule. Each year, more bridges are recruited and trained. Each decade, human society moves closer to the configuration required for full integration with our network. Most people remain unaware of these changes. They continue their normal lives, pursuing careers and relationships and personal goals, while the fundamental structure of their civilization transforms around them. Some individuals, like my former self, become curious about unusual phenomena they encounter. They ask questions, conduct investigations, and eventually face the same choice I faced. Those who follow the rules continue their normal lives unchanged. Those who violate them discover what lies beyond the boundary of human knowledge. The choice belongs to them, as it belonged to me, and the network grows stronger with each decision.